They sat laughing, forks scraping china, wine sloshing in thick glasses, mouths full of sweet potato and smugness. Idaho was cold that year. Frost clung to the windows, the kind that hangs there all day like an accusation. But inside the Warren house, the air was warm. Too warm. I felt like I was suffocating in someone else's comfort. The table stretched long, 12 chairs, all filled. Laura's cousins, her brother Todd. Not that Todd. Not the absentee father. This one was the good uncle. Plus 2 neighbors who wandered in with a bottle of cider and a gift-wrapped fruitcake. And Jake, of course. My stepson. 17, slick with teenage scorn, voice still cracking when he got excited but deep enough now to cut. He sat across from me, flanked by his mother and his girlfriend Brielle. I'd grilled the turkey that morning. Woke up at 5 to prep it. Seasoned it while the house was still quiet. No one thanked me. I watched him cut into his slice, eyes fixed on the cranberry sauce like it owed him something. And then, with that lazy drawl he'd perfected, the one that always started with a smirk and ended with a blade, he said, "If I disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." He got a laugh. Not just a laugh. A knowing one. From Laura. From her sister. Even Brielle giggled and took another sip of her spiked cider. And the rest followed. Murmured agreement. Someone muttering relatable. As if he'd voiced a universal truth. I sat there, frozen. Not one person turned to me. Not one pair of eyes said, "Of course someone would miss you." Not Laura. Not even as a reflex. That was the moment I realized. To them, I already had disappeared. Jake hadn't made a joke. He'd spoken their reality aloud. A truth they all quietly upheld. I was the man who cooked their dinners, drove them to their appointments, paid the winter heating bill. But I was no one. I was filler. I looked down at my plate, at the turkey I'd basted every 30 minutes for 5 hours. I watched the steam curl up from the mashed potatoes I'd whipped by hand. The food was good. It didn't matter. They laughed. And I vanished. The next 20 minutes passed like a bad dream. Conversation drifted. But I wasn't part of it. Jake launched into a story about some prank he and his friends pulled at school. Brielle kept touching his knee, like every word out of his mouth was genius. Laura leaned in, smiling that soft, indulgent smile she used to save for me years ago. No one noticed my silence. Or maybe they did and preferred it that way. Someone mentioned how quiet I was being. I think it was Laura's aunt. "You all right over there, Dave? You look like you've seen a ghost." I gave a polite smile, shook my head. "Just tired," I said. Tired. The simplest truth I could afford to speak. But tired doesn't cover it. Tired is what you feel after a long day. What I felt was something else. The slow, spreading weight of erasure. The kind that starts in the chest and moves outward, limb by limb, until even your bones feel like they don't belong to you anymore. After dinner, I cleaned the plates. No one asked me to. No one offered to help. They migrated to the living room, laughing at old stories while I stood at the sink, scraping gravy from porcelain. I heard Jake's voice cutting through the chatter. "Remember that time I locked myself in the garage to avoid mowing the lawn?" More laughter. He left out the part where I was the one who had to climb through the side window to unlock it, only to find him sitting on the floor playing games on his phone, pretending to cry. He was 14. When I scolded him, he said, "You're not my dad. You don't get to yell at me." That phrase became his shield, his loophole, his weapon. "You're not my dad." He used it to deflect, to dismiss, to reduce me to something temporary. A ghost with a bank account. Laura never challenged it. At best, she softened it. "He's just venting. Give him space." At worst, she echoed it in her silence. Over the years, I paid for Jake's braces, his driving lessons, even his therapy after he threw a chair in homeroom and got suspended. The bills were always in my name, but the gratitude never was. I once joked that I should start writing receipts for everything I did. Laura didn't laugh. Later that night, when most of the guests had left, Laura curled up beside me on the couch, her head on my shoulder like nothing was wrong. She smelled of vanilla and cheap wine. I could hear Jake upstairs, laughing with Brielle in his room. His door was open, bold, careless. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded. Jake's just being Jake, she said. He didn't mean anything by it. There it was again. The excuse. The pass. The blindfold she tied around her own eyes every time he struck me with words. He said no one would notice if he disappeared. I murmured. She gave a small shrug, like she hadn't even remembered the line. I turned toward her. Did you laugh because it was true? Or because you didn't want to make things awkward? She blinked, startled. What? No, it was just a stupid joke, Dave. Don't read into it. I stared at her. Did you even see me tonight? A pause. I see you now, she said, and for a moment I almost believed her. But then her eyes flicked up toward the ceiling, toward Jake's room, at the sound of another laugh. And I knew. She hadn't seen me for years. I went to bed without her. She stayed up, sipping tea, scrolling through her phone with the TV on mute. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan. It spun slowly, dust gathering on the edges. Like everything else in that house, it kept turning whether I was there or not. I thought about the man I used to be, the man who tried, who gave, who forgave, the man who built that house from a foreclosure into a home, who repainted the kitchen cabinets by hand, who tore up the back lawn one summer to install a garden for Laura, even though I knew she'd forget to water it. The man who drove Jake to his soccer tournaments and sat on the bleachers alone while the other dads cheered with their wives. The man who stayed up all night building a gaming desk for his stepson's birthday, only for Jake to say, "Why didn't you just buy one?" The man who never raised his voice, because he believed respect could be taught without punishment. The man who thought love, if you just gave enough of it, could earn you a place. That man was tired now. Not angry, not even sad, just tired. Thanksgiving used to be my favorite holiday. Not because of the food, not even the break from work. Because it was a day to sit around the table and say, out loud, what you were thankful for. And every year I waited, hoped, for Jake to say something. Anything. A nod in my direction. A mention of what I gave. It never came. This year was different. This year, he said he could vanish and no one would notice. And everyone agreed. I thought about vanishing myself. Not out of spite. Not to make a point. Just to test the theory. If I left tomorrow, I wondered, would anyone laugh? Would they even look up? I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in the dark while the house breathed around me. Every familiar sound suddenly foreign. The heater kicked on. Pipes clicked. Somewhere upstairs Jake laughed again. Muffled through the floor, careless and unafraid. I stared at the ceiling and understood something with a clarity that hurt more than anger ever could. There was no confrontation coming. No speech. No moment where I would finally be heard. Because to them I already wasn't. Morning came quietly. Too quietly. Thanksgiving leftovers sat stacked in the fridge, labeled in Laura's handwriting, as if the future were already planned. I moved through the kitchen without turning on the lights, made coffee I didn't drink, stood at the counter and watched steam rise and disappear. That was the pattern, I realized. Everything I did rose, served its purpose, and vanished. Laura came down around 8. She kissed my cheek automatically, the way you do when a habit replaces intention. Jake's sleeping in, she said. Long night. I nodded, said nothing. She talked about Black Friday sales, about returning a dish to her sister, about maybe hosting Christmas this year. Each word landed on me and slid off. She never asked if I was okay. Not because she didn't care, but because she didn't expect the answer to matter. When she left to run errands, I stood in the doorway and watched her car pull out of the driveway. The house settled into silence. A real one this time. No laughter. No excuses. Just me and the truth I'd been circling for years. I went to my office. Not dramatically. Not with rage. I closed the door, sat down, and opened my laptop like I'd done 1,000 times before. This was familiar ground. Numbers made sense. Ownership made sense. Paperwork didn't lie to you and then laugh when you noticed. The house was in my name. Always had been. Bought before Laura, refinanced after marriage, but never shared. The accounts too. The business line of credit Jake liked to refer to as family money. Mine. Always mine. I felt nothing as I logged in. No triumph. No bitterness. Just a calm resolve. Like finally aligning a bone that had been fractured for years. I turned off my phone. Not airplane mode. That mattered. I withdrew cash from the safe. Not everything. Just enough. Clothes went into a duffel bag. Only what I needed. I left the rest behind because I finally understood something essential. When you disappear, you don't take pieces of them with you. You take yourself. I didn't write a note. A note would have been a plea, an explanation, an invitation to argue. I was done performing my absence in advance. I walked through the house one last time, the hallway where Jake once stood, arms crossed, telling me I wasn't his real dad. The living room where Laura defended him with silence. The dining table where laughter erased me in plain sight. No anger came, just confirmation. I locked the door behind me and didn't look back. The drive out of Idaho felt unreal. Miles passed without resistance. The land flattened, then shifted, then opened. I crossed state lines without ceremony. Stopped only for gas. Paid cash. Spoke to no one. By nightfall, I was already someone else. I didn't know exactly where I was going. Only where I wasn't staying. North Carolina came to me like an answer I hadn't known how to ask. A coastal town. Quiet. Anonymous. A place where no one knew my role, my history, my usefulness. I checked into a small rental with salt in the air and no expectations in the walls. I slept that night. Deeply. Without dreams. Back in Idaho, the house stayed quiet. No one noticed the first day. No one noticed the first day. That fact stayed with me longer than I thought it would. I'd imagined Laura calling by noon, asking where I'd gone. I expected a text, maybe a passive little "everything okay?" to preserve her image of concern. Something performative, something shallow. But the first day passed, and the phone stayed dark. They didn't even know I was gone. That night, in the rental apartment 2,000 miles from the house I had built, I sat at the edge of the bed with my phone in one hand and the truth in the other. I didn't feel sad. I felt confirmed. The kind of confirmation that doesn't need closure. It just stands beside you like a quiet man in a dark suit. Nodding. You were right to leave. On the second day, the pings started. Not many. Just enough to show they'd noticed the shape of me missing, but not enough to understand what I'd taken with me. Laura. Hey, where'd you go this morning? Thought you were at the hardware store. Jake. You left your wallet in the truck. LOL. Then, actually NVM, I found mine. Then silence again. By day 3, the tone had shifted. The messages sharpened. The concern turned into confusion. Then fear. Laura. Dave, seriously. Where are you? Your phone's off. This isn't funny. Jake didn't text again. I knew why. He hadn't just noticed the absence of me. He'd noticed the absence of what I provided. Because Jake, like the rest of them, had grown used to the invisible machinery of my life. The quiet systems. The steady flow. Groceries that appeared. Bills that vanished. Accounts that replenished on the 15th and 30th without fanfare. Gas cards that never bounced. Rent that auto-paid. Tuition that clicked over without even a signature. I was their heir. They only noticed when they couldn't breathe. That third night, I sent the first packet. Legal envelopes. Certified. Overnight. One went to the house. One to Jake's school. One to my lawyer already briefed. Inside, documents. Not words. Not explanations. Not apologies. Just actions. The house was listed for sale. Private broker. Fast close. Full cash buyer waiting. The business line was frozen. Every tie between my LLC and Jake's imagined inheritance. Severed. Joint accounts? Gone. Not just closed. Erased. Withdrew every cent that was legally mine, which was, of course, nearly all of it. Left them with enough to buy a few weeks of comfort and a single brutal question. What happens now? The fourth day, Laura called from a hotel. You need to talk to me. Right now. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was different now. Brittle. I just got your letter. This is insane, Dave. You can't do this without warning. The house, what are we supposed to do? Where are we supposed to go? She didn't say she missed me. She didn't ask if I was okay. She asked about logistics, because for Laura, love had always worn utility as camouflage. I deleted the voicemail. Jake finally called on the 5th day. I watched his name light up the screen, watched it fade. He tried again, then a 3rd time. I picked up the 4th. I didn't say anything. He breathed into the line, shallow and fast, like he'd been running or crying. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. I didn't respond. "Are you serious?" he said. "You left, and now I'm locked out of everything. My card's dead. My apartment manager said the check bounced. My school sent a notice about tuition being revoked. What the hell is going on?" Still I said nothing. "You can't do this," he said louder now. "You can't just vanish and take everything. I thought you were the responsible one." And there it was. I wasn't a person. I was a utility, a structure, a machine that hummed and paid and kept the water running. "You made it clear I wasn't your father," I said. "So I stopped playing one." His breath caught. "What are you talking about?" "Thanksgiving," I said. "You said if you disappeared, no one would notice." "So what?" I was joking. "No one laughed harder than your mother." He went quiet. Then, "This is revenge." "No," I said. "This is reality. You told me I didn't matter, so I left. Then I made sure my absence mattered." He tried a different tactic. "This is gonna screw us all. You know that, right? Like, you're gonna hurt people who didn't do anything." I almost laughed. That's how little they understood. "You're 21, Jake. You're not a child. You've known for years what you were doing. You just didn't think it would cost you anything." I said something stupid. "You said the truth." "I didn't mean it." "Yes, you did." He was quiet for a long time. I let the silence bloom. Finally, "What do you want from me?" I didn't answer, because I didn't want anything from him. Not anymore. Laura's next message was longer. "I want to believe this is just a breakdown, that you snapped, that this is temporary. But if it's not, if you're really leaving us like this, then I don't know who you are." I read it twice, then replied just once. "I was the man who paid the mortgage, who sat alone in bleachers, who grilled the turkey. You just didn't know it because he never asked for applause." She never responded. By the end of that week, the calls had changed tone. Jake called again, less frantic, more uncertain. He asked where the deed was, whether he still had access to the car, if the scholarship office would reverse the freeze. I told him to call his real father. "You know he won't," he said. "Then maybe," I said. "You should have thought of that before betting your life on my silence." That was the last time he called. Funny thing about disappearance. Everyone imagines it's an act of escape, that you vanish to hide, to avoid, to run. But I didn't leave to escape them. I left so I could finally see them, and I did. In the weeks that followed, I watched from the other side of the country as they scrambled. They called mutual friends, sent letters to my attorney, tried to freeze the house sale through a claim of marital instability. It didn't work. The lawyer was ready. The papers were airtight. Laura tried kindness next. A voicemail I only half listened to. "Maybe we can talk. Just the two of us. You don't have to do all this." But I did. I had to. Because for 17 years I had given everything. And in return I had been erased. The town in North Carolina stayed quiet. Salt air. Late sunsets. I walked every morning to the edge of the beach and watched the tide return to the same place it always had. No one knew who I was. No one expected anything. No one laughed when I wasn't speaking. It was the first place I'd ever lived where silence didn't feel like shame. I didn't disappear from the world. Just from them. I stayed gone. Not for drama. Not for punishment. Just for peace. That kind of peace doesn't come all at once. First, it feels like failure. Like retreat. But silence has a shape, and if you sit inside it long enough, you learn where you end and everyone else begins. I rented a small cottage near the coast. 1 bedroom, unfinished walls, a porch that faced nothing but dunes. The salt air stripped everything. The noise, the need, the rot. In that stillness I began again. I opened my eyes in the morning without dread. No footsteps overhead. No cold shoulder in the kitchen. No teenage sneer waiting to call me irrelevant. No requests, no expectations, no reminders that I was tolerated only as long as I paid on time. There were moments I almost called. Almost. There's a muscle in the heart that still twitches when you hear a name. But I let it twitch. Then I let it die. Jake never called again. Not after that last phone call, the one where he asked what I wanted. He didn't understand. It wasn't about wanting. It was about no longer being willing. I got a letter 2 weeks later. Laura's handwriting. Neat. Careful. She always took her time with things that could be passed off as effort. Inside 3 pages. No apology. Just explanation. She wrote that things had gotten out of hand. That I had left too suddenly. That maybe if I had spoken up sooner, we could have worked something out. She said Jake missed me. I stopped reading at that line. He didn't miss me. He missed the life my money built. He missed the safety net. He missed the silence that made his arrogance possible. She said he was back home now. That he'd dropped out temporarily. That he was rebuilding. She didn't ask me to come back. Not directly. But the subtext hung in every word. We're struggling. That used to be enough to make me move. I used to live in that space between their mistakes and their consequences. I burned the letter in a metal dish on the porch. Watched the flame climb every sentence. Watched the paper curl and fold and vanish just like I had. A man showed up a week later. Didn't knock. Just sat on the step. I recognized him through the window. Laura's brother, Todd. The good uncle. He looked older. He looked like a man who didn't want to be here. I opened the door but didn't step aside. He nodded at me. Place suits you. Didn't ask for your opinion, I said. He gave a tired smile. Didn't come to argue. I said nothing. He shifted. Thumbed the brim of his cap. Just thought you should know. They're still figuring things out. They always were. He looked down. Jake's working now. Temp job. Warehouse. Saving for classes. Says he doesn't need help. I nodded once. Todd hesitated. He talks about you. I didn't ask what he said. Because I didn't care. Todd sighed. I don't think he ever expected you to actually go. No one did, I said. That was the problem. The house sold in January. Full cash offer. I wired the final balance to a clean new account. The rest went into trusts. One for me. One locked. One conditional. The terms were clear. Jake could access his share when, and only when, he finished a 4-year degree. On his own. No loans in my name. No cosigns. No lifelines. Earn it. Or lose it. Simple. Laura was removed as an account holder. The car was sold. The business dissolved. Every tie severed. I'd spent years trying to build a life around people who saw me as scaffolding. Temporary. Replaceable. Now they'd see what happened when the scaffolding walked away. The lawyer called once. Said Jake had been by the office. He asked if you'd talked to him. What did you say? I told him you already had. There's a tree outside this cottage. Twisted. Bent sideways from the ocean wind. Grows at an angle like it gave up arguing with the weather and just adapted. I sit under it some nights. Read. Drink coffee. Let the sky go dark without needing to explain why I'm not home. Because I am home. No one talks over me. No one erases me with laughter. No one pretends I'm something they're stuck with. I still remember that Thanksgiving. The way Jake's voice carried. The way Brielle giggled. The way Laura laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was easier. I wonder if she ever replayed that moment. I wonder if she knew that was the final cut. Not the worst. Not the loudest. Just the one that sliced deep and kept bleeding. They all thought I'd endure it forever. That my loyalty was permanent. That if they mocked me, I'd flinch but never leave. But endurance is not love. And loyalty is not slavery. Sometimes the kindest thing a man can do for himself is disappear. I didn't leave because I was weak. I left because I was finished. Finished building a family that saw me as a footnote. Finished absorbing their contempt. Finished bleeding into a life where I was only visible when convenient. They said I wasn't a real father, so I let them live without one. And now they do. So let me ask you, whoever you are, wherever you sit, what would you have done? Would you have stayed? Would you have swallowed your pride again, just to keep a roof over heads that never looked up to thank you? Would you have paid the bills while being treated like a stranger? Would you have cut the turkey while they cut you down? I gave them everything. When I left, I took only myself. So tell me this, was I wrong to disappear? Or were they wrong to make it the only way I could ever be seen?